Thanks for joining us tonight. I am Dee Buckstaff. I am Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Wyoming. Thank you. And tonight's forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Wyoming, Teton County Library, KHOL, Jackson Hole News and Guide, Buckrail, and WyoFile. We will begin this evening with candidates for Senate District 17. And maybe about 6:35 or so, we'll start with the hospital board candidates. Each forum begins with candidates giving a 1-minute response to an icebreaker question. We will rotate amongst media partners asking questions and also the order of the candidates so that everyone has a chance to go first. Our media panel consists of Billy Arnold from Jackson Hole News and Guide, Mike Kochmerl from WyoFile, Toby Cookcook from Buckrail, and Kyle Mackey from KHOL. Later on, Miranda De Mores will be part of the panel for the hospital board. Let's see. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer questions. Our timekeeper tonight is Susan Dunn. She is also a League of Women Voters of Wyoming member. The candidates have 2 red cards to use at any time. They're worth up to 1.5 minutes and can be used as the candidate sees fit. You can rebut something someone says, expand on your answer, or bring up something that you deem important. If audience members are interested in asking questions, you may use note cards, which Sandy Shuptron has, and write your question down, and Sandy will come and pick it up and bring it to the media panel for consideration. At the end of their portion of the evening, candidates will be given 1 minute to give a summation or present closing remarks. So we are going to start with the icebreaker. I'm not sure who's asking the icebreaker. All right.
Can you all hear me? Is that working? Is that working now?
There we go.
No.
Oh. I'll just talk loudly.
There's that other mic too. There's a second.
Oh, this one here. Is that one working? Try it one more time.
We did check them.
Is that what working now?
There it is.
Apparently very loud.
I know.
I'm Billy, I'm the environmental reporter at News and Guide, and our icebreaker tonight is, who is one person you voted for in the past that you'll never vote for again, and why?
Interesting.
You all answer it.
We'll start with you, Mike.
Mike Carew, Senate District 17. First, I'd like to thank the League for having us here tonight. I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Can you use that? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Now that in, payroll. Thank you for the question. Who's someone I voted for who I wouldn't vote for again? I'll tell you, actually, I voted for him twice, and I kind of got mad at him the second time. Jim Stanford for the town council. He came to my house, and so that's why I voted for him. We talked about this in a campaign meeting a couple of weeks ago. And the first time he served, and I got mad at him a couple of times, but he came back to my door, and so I doggone, I'm going to give him another shot. I voted for him again. Made me so mad about a couple of things that so, boy, if he ever came back, I wouldn't do it a third time. And he didn't give it the chance, so he didn't. So I think that was my one. But he was a good public servant. I just didn't see eye to eye with him.
Well, way to start with a doozy of a question. I would have to say that I voted for Pete Muldoon, and I don't know that I would ever be considered or consider to vote for Pete Muldoon ever again, because I appreciate people putting themselves out there to support and be a part of our community, but to have somebody directly attack people on social media on a daily basis in such a harsh way, I feel that it's very difficult to support the community and also come down on the community in such a harsh way.
Was your question limited to local government candidates? All right, I'll swing for the fence. Barack Obama. I was so excited to vote for him, and I did. I encouraged all my kids to vote for Barack Obama, the first black president. He wrote the book, The Audacity of Hope. Well, he had the audacity to steal hope from so many in the black community. Look at Chicago today. He squandered an opportunity to be the man that I voted for. I think the man that he could have been is much larger than the man he is today. Thank you.
What order did you guys want to go in? I should have asked that.
We're going to start with me.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Mike Cosmerl. I cover politics and environmental issues for WyoFile. This is a question for everybody. It's becoming increasingly difficult to pass bills through the divided Wyoming legislature. Last session, only 59% of committee-sponsored bills survived to become law, which was the 23-year low. Partly this is because of a widening of the ideological divide. Where do you see yourself falling on the landscape of ideologies, and how will you cut through the division and pass bills?
Amanda, you can be the first one to answer.
As being part of the legislative sessions and going to Cheyenne and working with the Libertarian Party of the state, I find that it's very difficult for us as a county to actually be recognized.
Put the microphone to your mouth.
To actually be recognized. I believe that it's very important that our state recognizes Teton County, and I believe that the anti-Teton County bills that we've seen are so disheartening and so disappointing, because we can do so much more and we add so much to the state. So I would really like to be able to stand up and go to Cheyenne and fight for us as a county and make sure that we have a seat at the table and that we are heard.
You can pass it to Steve.
That's an excellent question. Thank you. The Teton County Republicans who have gone to the legislature were good men, wise men. Grant Larson, John Turner, they were respected in Cheyenne. They were elected presidents of the Senate by their colleagues in Cheyenne across the state. Will that happen now? The Republican Party is way too hard right. Reagan, the successful politician he became, he had a big tent philosophy. If within the Republican Party we can't accomplish anything in Cheyenne as the majority party because the litmus test is so stringent, you can't even get to the substance of issues, then the Teton County leaders in Cheyenne have to go down there and have the right skill set to work with that kind of hard right legislature and do something about it. It can't continue like this. People lament the fact, why do we need one more Republican in Cheyenne? Well, that's right. Why do you? Well, you do if the people like Grant Larson and John Turner, who can work with everyone and try to get something accomplished for the good of Wyoming, and especially for the good of Teton County. We have to have effective leadership in Cheyenne. We'll have to stand against the hard right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, for the question. I believe as a senator, I do. I'm one of two Democrats in a House of 30 senators, and I can tell you I don't have the luxury of not listening to Republicans. I have to forge friendships, forge relationships, and work very hard and listen to folks on the other side and actually I've had some success. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, I serve on 9 others, but Appropriations Committee is my main function, and I've served with the good Representative Schwartz, who's retiring. We're going to miss you, Andy. But I sit next to a fellow senator, Sherry Stemmons, from Goshen County. Probably one of the most hardcore right-wing persons in the body. And the first year we didn't talk too much to each other. We just sat next to each other and, hello, how are you? And we voted just about the opposite way on just about everything. The second year, last year, I sat down with her on the first day and I said, Sherry, you and I are both married. We both have kids. We both own a small business in Wyoming. 80% of our lives is in a shared experience together in Wyoming. 20% of the time we don't agree on issues. Let's go to dinner once a week. Or just go out and have a drink and talk about our lives, our kids, our business. Today we're friends. And we work with each other on bills. We serve together now on water, select water, and we're carrying bills together. And that's how you get it done. That's how you get it done in the budget legislature. That's the answer to your question. Thanks, man.
Kyle? Can we just go down the table? We ordered our questions in this order. Or you want us to switch it up?
Oh, I see. So you want to go back now?
If that's what we do, we just go down the table.
Sure. No problem.
Great, thank you all. This next question is about abortion, and the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade concluded that decisions about abortion access should be decided at the state level. The question is, what restrictions, if any, do you think should be imposed on abortion in Wyoming, and how would you, if at all, modify the state's current abortion ban?
I'm up first.
You can go first.
I'd like to add a minute to this answer, if I may. Most difficult choice a woman can make is whether or not to carry a baby full term, whether she's 16 or 46. Even Roe versus Wade said in the 3rd trimester, except for rape, incest to the life of the mother, society, and maybe the law, has something to say about that. But really, what does the law have to say about a woman's basic liberty to choose what happens to her own body? Consider what conservatives did on the vaccine issue. My body, my choice means even if I get fired from the military, you're not going to force me to have a medical procedure I don't want. Some on spiritual grounds. Well, how can the law say to a woman, you will carry a baby full term? What kind of child will that be? So this is a spiritual issue. After Roe versus Wade, after Dodd, the good thing is we do have the opportunity to actually have a culture of life. Not abortion being the first thing a woman decides because it's maybe too easy. But come beside her with resources in the community to show compassion and show love, whether she's 16 or 46 again. This is your choice. It is your body. But now, in the light of day, without abortion being the first choice, we have the medical, emotional, financial resources to help you take the time to decide. If some bad guy is in your life, we have compassion for the fact that it might have been rape, incest. We have compassion for the fact that emotionally, you can't carry a baby full term. So it is the woman's right to choose. But let's stand with her. Let's pray that she chooses life. 30 seconds left. Yeah, so there was this woman in Minnesota. She was forced to have a baby. The Catholic Church back in those days sent women away, spare embarrassment for the family. She never told the guy who got her pregnant. She never told her 5 children and her husband. And she never told him about me. This is a very personal issue. She didn't have a choice. She was sent away. I have to tell you, I grew up with a chip on my shoulder as an adopted kid. I'm glad she didn't have a choice, but she should have, and I wouldn't be here. Complicated, isn't it?
Thanks for the question. I think I was very disappointed this summer when the rights, a fundamental right of half the citizens of our country, half the citizens of our state was taken away. And now it's going to fall to the Wyoming legislature in the next session, and the session after that, to start to define what happens next. Really, no matter what the Supreme Court does, state Supreme Court does, with the judge's ruling that come down out of this county, they will decide. In this election, you will decide who gets to make these judgments. I am squarely for a woman's right to choose. That having been said, like a president, a friend of mine used to say, abortion should be safe, legal, and ultimately rare. We should not argue with this subject in politics. We should be spending our time and our effort counseling, training, teaching people, men and women, young children, young adults, so it never happens. No one is for an abortion. But as long as, until that day comes, it should be safe and it should be legal. And that's where I stand.
As a female sitting here on this panel, I can say it just as simply as it possibly can be said. I am a female that supports females' health freedoms. It's so vital and important that we have safe options to make sure that we are healthy and that we can make the right decisions when things out of our control happen. Therefore, I stand as a pro-choice candidate through and through, and I will stand and fight hard for everybody for what they deserve.
Okay, Toby.
Hi, my name is Toby Cook from Buckrail. My question is about election integrity. Some Republicans in the Wyoming legislature are currently advocating for stripping the Secretary of State of its sole authority to oversee elections because of Chuck Gray, who has questioned the integrity of Wyoming's elections in the 2020 presidential election, won the primary. Would you support that effort? And would you support the new structure that's been proposed, which would see all 5 states' top elected officials oversee elections?
Thanks, Cody. I can say that I thought it was quite interesting during the last election. Representative Gray, running for Secretary of State, talked a lot about election integrity. On election night, he won by 13,000 votes. He really didn't mention it at all. That one must have been very integrity-filled when he won, I guess. No, I don't agree that we should, automatically be trying to mess around with the rights of the duties of the Secretary of State. I brought a bill last year to ask the treasurer to do his constitutional duty, and I was a Democrat who got a 30-zip vote on introduction in a room full of Republicans to make him do it, to make him do his job. So believe me, I'm not afraid to tell power that they need to fulfill their constitutional duties. But until they stop doing it, I don't think it's fair that we start. So I actually would not be as supportive of that until he gave me a reason to want to do it. And I think that's a reasonable way to go about that. Thank you.
I believe that our elections are such a sacred and beautiful thing in our nation, and being an election judge and counting votes every single year for the last 3 years has been such an important thing to me, because I've really seen that, especially in our county, we have an amazing group of people that put on our elections. So I feel as though on a county basis, we are seeing some of the most true, real elections that you can see anywhere in the nation. So I believe that, yes, there is being held accountable and making sure that we are doing the right thing and we are counting the votes correctly, but in Teton County, we are very fortunate to have such an amazing group of people that truly cares about every single vote that comes through.
Chuck Gray as the Secretary of State, and those who saw their candidate not win want to strip that office of powers. This happened before. It happened with the Superintendent of Public Instruction. Same thing. They tried to strip her of her powers. It went to the Wyoming Supreme Court. They said it's unconstitutional. This would be unconstitutional unless they craft it in some special way. But more than that, this gets back to the issue of the hard right. You know, a hard right candidate won the Secretary of State's office. A fair election, apparently. So what does this say about the legislature? Again, I'm not a stranger to Cheyenne. I've written, researched, and lobbied passage of bills, the Recreation Safety Act, the Wildfire Liability Act. I've been at the legislature for 7 years on a constitutional law issue that Andy and Mike know way too much about. I haven't gotten them to agree. But the hard right down there on a constitutional law issue where the remedy to limit the power of the federal government is in the Constitution, they say, that's not enough. We want to nullify federal law. Nullification, the remedy of nullification is what led us to the Civil War. Didn't work. It's not going to work. Anyway, we'll have to live with Chuck Gray.
Kyle, your turn.
Okay. Wyoming is notorious for being one of the world's top tax havens for the ultra-wealthy, at the same time as the state struggles to fund public schools and other essential services. Would you advocate for any additional taxes or changes to the state's tax structure if elected to this office? And also how will you work with some of your colleagues in the state legislature who have pledged never to raise or add any additional taxes?
Taxation is such an interesting subject, and I believe that we are so fortunate where we live that we have the amount of tourism that we do, that they are putting a certain amount into our county, and we're very blessed for that. But I am very intrigued in working with multiple people in the legislature across the aisles to make sure that we are using our tax dollars appropriately, and potentially there could be something implemented in the future that could help us even more. I don't know exactly what I would support specifically, but I would love to have the conversation and make sure that we are not only doing the correct thing with the tax dollars that we are already receiving, but we are going to do the really correct thing if we add a new tax going forward.
So, ancient history, I received a master's degree in tax law from Georgetown in 1982. So, I care about taxes. It's as exciting as reading the phone book, but it's really important. I have available on the table back there something as a handout, 5 bills I'd like to write and pass in 2023. Number 1, legislation that would help restore and maintain U.S. energy independence and have Wyoming lead the way. If we restore U.S. energy independence, then the mineral and oil and gas industry that has been the economic engine for Wyoming will be viable again. We threw away our energy independence for no reason. So I know that Democrats in the room, all good people, they kind of lament the fact that we want to get an income tax passed, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. This tax structure is there. We just have to invest in the industries that fund our schools. So with energy, minerals, getting back to domestic production that leads the world with clean energy, we won't have to worry about an income tax. Wyoming is so blessed with natural resources. Let's let that industry go. It's the cleanest energy in the world. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. We should be taking a look at our tax picture a little more globally. We have the lowest tax burden of any state in the union, and that's just a fact. In this county, though, we're plagued with a rise in our property taxes because our valuation of our assessed valuation of our property is going up. And at the same time, other forms of energy resources that have carried our tax burden are not carrying the tax burden anymore because there's not the market for them. I'm talking about coal in particular. Coal and energy, gas, and oil will be part of our energy picture for the next 40 years. But it's a declining revenue source for us. At the same time, our property taxes are going up because our values are going up. When we sit in a room in Cheyenne and says we're going to raise taxes, it's because of the value of your home is going up and the tax is going up because of that. Now, what can we do? What we can do, and I've worked on a bill draft that's being circulated right now amongst the lawyers around, to cap our property tax increase at 10%. Cap, so next year, your property tax, you would know that your property tax will only go up 10%. So that's what you would pay. Now, if your property tax went up higher than that, the balance would be a balance carry forward that when you disposed of the property, you would have to true up that tax. But that would give us time to come up with a constitutional amendment that could actually address that issue more fully. Can I use this to take it another minute? This is critical right now because I do disagree with my good friend Steve on this. I don't think just letting oil and gas production and coal production just run free is going to A, solve the problem, or B, create a market that's not there anymore. It's just simply not the case. And so I fundamentally believe that the best way to do this in the short term is to cap property tax increases, which will help folks in Teton County. And we're already helping those who need it most. Once again, Representative Schwartz and I have worked really hard to get people on fixed incomes and senior citizens tax break that they desperately need. And then Representative Yen, in another part of our delegation, has got a bill to let the county put in money to help that program. We should expand that program. The people who need it most need tax relief. But that, in addition to a cap on the raise, can help people now, and then a permanent solution would be a constitutional amendment. And then I'd like to see us take a look at the other taxes there and see if there's some equitable way that we could come up, because there are lots of good ideas out there, and we should really explore them. Thank you.
May I use the card? So I've been very fortunate to be general counsel for Lower Valley Energy for 33 years. And I've also been a founder and the incorporator of Jackson Hole Center for Global Affairs. We went to China with John Turner and the Wentz on a clean coal, clean energy initiative. And there is technology there to have clean coal. In the meantime, until that technology comes around and there's investment there, at the coal mines that aren't being used because the transmission lines are already in place, we can do nuclear. And that's happening in Kemmerer. There are other places we can do that. So coal gasification, clean coal technology is coming along. 3 other things on taxes. The real estate property tax relief. Simply, there are 3 components that I would put in a bill right away. Exemptions for the elderly and infirm, credits based on income. The lower the income, the more credit. And a cap, say 3%. With respect to other taxes, the real estate transfer tax. I'm a realtor. I've done well in real estate, ranch real estate. I encourage the real estate community to get ahead of this issue and voluntarily commit to use the program that's in the Jackson Hole Community Housing Trust, the private trust, to voluntarily put 1% of each closing in there. I pledge to do that. If they don't do it, in 2024, we're going to probably look at that tax. It's much needed. The critical housing issues here aren't going away. And finally, with respect to other funding, the school sections in Teton County, we've been asleep at the switch. We have a school section next to Teton Village. The state land board did a request for income proposals, and we got glamping and storage containers. So I will introduce a bill with respect to funding the schools, which won't require an income tax, to have a fair process where the Teton County will get 6 months' notice. State land board's going to do a request for proposals, and this community will come up with an awesome, astonishing master plan for that school section that will have long-term funding. So we've got to have some leadership in Cheyenne and in Teton County where we're not caught flat-footed and the state land board arrogantly throws glamping and cargo containers out there. Those are my thoughts.
Can I use this? I would like to piggyback off of what Mike Carew has said. I believe that we need to work on the property taxes, and it's so important in this community that we find a way to do a property tax reform and really try to find a cap and make sure that the people that have paved the way and made the community what it is today still have the chance to stay in this community. And what we're seeing right now with property taxes, they are so high because of the low availability of housing. So I think we also need to go into the subject of housing and how we can really address what we can do and how many more units we can get in. And then we can move forward with the right, correct taxing to make sure that we're putting it back into the community to help us as much as possible. And secondly, as the Libertarian Party statewide, we are very in support of legalization of marijuana. That includes decriminalization and medical. And I think that that could be a huge subject for us to be able to bring in extra tax dollars and put it back into housing or many other different subjects.
Even though it's a little bit, getting a little bit late, I would like one more question. Do you have one more question?
We got a lot of questions. Teton County is a lot different than the rest of Wyoming. There's a fair amount of legislation that's tailor-made, targeting just us. Whether local elected officials want that or not, what should be the legislature's role in addressing Teton County specific issues, whether private school zoning or municipal control of access to public sewer systems?
Amanda, it's your turn to go first.
I thought I went
Oh,
first on the
sorry,
last one.
Steve. You're right. It's Steve's turn.
Could you ask that question again, please?
You want me to read the whole thing or just?
Just sum it up.
Sure. What should be the legislature's role in tinkering in Teton County business?
Well, the question is, like the state land board, why do they have this arrogant attitude towards Teton County? Why didn't they allow a fair process with respect to how to develop that school section? I'm on the Wyoming Stock Growers Land Trust, so I'm out of Teton County a lot. And, you have to drive 30 minutes to enter Wyoming. And that's the attitude they have. They don't like us. And some of it's our own fault. My answer is, there are 2 senators in the 30-person Senate who are Democrats. I'm telling you about the hard right. I've been down there 7 years. I can't get a constitutional resolution passed. Can you imagine how difficult it is for Mike, as persuasive as he is, to have a dent in that kind of hard right Senate? What are you going to do about that? I can tell you this, if I win on November 8th, I've already gotten a letter from this Legislative Services Office telling me to be in Casper on the 12th, when the Republican caucus of the Senate is going to meet and set the agenda for next year. And they also mentioned that we don't know when the Democrats are going to meet. So we've got to be reality-based. For a lot of reasons, it's just human nature. The rest of Wyoming isn't Teton County, and they have an attitude about Teton County. I have the temperament and the experience down there to work with these people and try to accomplish things on behalf of Teton County, like Grant Larson did, John Turner, Clarine Law. My goodness, if I could be like them, we'll get someplace.
Thanks, Mike, for the question. 23 counties, 99 cities and towns in the state of Wyoming. Each one is unique, each one is individual, each one, the citizens of each one think they are individually special. And then the legislature comes in, which is the arm of government that runs county government. And the county has no lawmaking of its own, it all comes from the state. Cities and towns have home rule, but they too fall to the legislature for certain rules and certain laws to be made. I've had a lot of luck in the legislature, thank you, helping you, working for you. We're going to build a college soon down next to the high school, and we got that funding for that school for Teton County from the Wyoming legislature, just for Teton County. We've gotten money for early childhood education. We've gotten funding for, right now on Select Water, we're getting water for water studies in South Park, water studies at Hoback Junction, working on now progress on getting money for a new sewer plant, possibly, in Teton County. Those are all being done because I'm on those committees and I'm working with Republicans, Democrats, and whoever wants to come and talk about these issues and work on Teton County issues. And you know what? When you do that and you spend the time and you spend those hours working on those issues, all of a sudden people realize that I'm just like them. I'm on those committees to work with people. I'm on those committees to work for you. And as your senator, again on November 8th as your senator, I'll be doing just that. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
So my husband and I run our businesses here in Teton County and statewide. And every single time we go to a donation event where we've supplied the wine and supplied the time, every time I hear somebody has to say something about Teton County in a negative way. And being a born and raised local in this town, I want to make sure that I fight for us as Teton County because we deserve a voice and we deserve to have the funding and all of the opportunity that anybody else does in this state. So I believe it's very important that we stand up and we fight very hard to make sure that our voices are heard because as a county, we add a lot to the state with all of our tourism and everything that happens here, and we deserve a voice and we deserve the right to have funding and move forward in the same way that everybody else does in this state.
Okay, we are now out of time for this forum. So, Mike, you have a minute to sum up.
Thank you, and thanks again to the league. Thanks for having us. 3 years and 9 months ago, I started working for you as your state senator. I've served for a year, and then we had a global pandemic, the likes of which the world's never seen. We went to work, we worked hard, we provided funding for businesses in this county and across the state for people, for businesses to stay strong, and for people to have an opportunity to keep their jobs. Less jobs were lost, less businesses closed here per capita than any other state. We spent more money, we worked hard, whether it was federal money or local money. And I worked hard, arm in arm with my Republican friends and Democratic friends to get this done. By the way, I have no idea when the Democratic caucus is either, and Clarine Law is a friend of mine and I count her as a proud supporter. On election day, those things matter, and I hope that you'll understand that in the next 4 years, I hope to equalize school funding, help solve tax problems that bedevil this community, and the last one, back to my old friend Andy over there, is to make a national park, the one that is in our district, just a little bit bigger. Thank you.
First off, I want to thank you all for your questions and really caring about our community. I believe that this town deserves so much and that we have so much to do and so much to fight for. And every time I drive to a wine appointment at Dornan's or out to the Teton Village, I look at the Tetons and it just reminds me how blessed and how lucky we all are that we live in such a beautiful place. And we all need to fight to remain in such an amazing, gorgeous home that is Jackson. In the last year, we have had an elected libertarian in the legislature, and he has done a really great job, and he has shown and proven what we can do for the state. And I believe that I can bring that effectiveness back to Teton County, and I just want to live here as much as everybody else does, and I want to make sure that we do the right thing for every single person and every walk of life in this community, because we all come from so many different sides and we deserve better.
I've had the opportunity to be the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce for 7 years. I had the opportunity to live and work at the Murray Ranch for 4 years. So I have literally lived the issues of commerce and conservation. And in my deepest being, we have got to stop what's happening in Jackson Hole. We're past the tipping point. Can we get back to where we're not crushing the workforce and we're not crushing our natural world and wildlife with too much commercial development, too much tourism? And I'm a chamber guy. In July, we set a record at the airport with what are called operations. There are 156 operations at the airport, rounded up to 160. That's like 80 takeoffs and 80 landings. Why don't, God, it's frustrating. Workforce housing mitigation for commercial development has been like zero for the last decade. Why doesn't commercial development pack its own employee housing problems? I have to stop. We're being Aspenized.